Yesterday, our shepherd shared with us their vision for adding more leadership to the church family here at Madison. And as we grow as a congregation, they see the need to grow more shepherds. So not only to care for the flock here, but also to be able to reach more people that are in our community. And so one of the things that I shared with you yesterday was how one of the tendencies that I had as a kid, whenever my preacher would get up and talk about elders and deacons and what their roles and responsibilities look like, I had a tendency at times to kind of check out in those messages. I thought, yeah, that has nothing to do with me. I'll just pay attention in 2 or 3 weeks, when a lesson is more applicable to me. But if you were with us yesterday, you remembered in my introduction, one of the things that I shared with you was all the different ways that shepherds played a huge role in my life. The ways that they encouraged me in ministry, the way they encouraged me in my marriage and with my family, the way they prayed for my dad as we had gone through some difficult times. Turns out that shepherding had a lot to do with me, and it has a lot to do with you. And so we opened up our Bible to several passages, but to set the tone, we looked in Psalm 23 and talked about that rod and that staff. And the staff was used by that shepherd to let them know, the sheep, that they were there. It signified presence. And so we talked about yesterday that a shepherd is always going to smell like his sheep. We also talked about how the staff was there to give provision. That tendency that sheep had at times was to kind of wander astray, and so they would use the crook of the neck of that staff to bring the sheep back in. We, like sheep, have all gone astray, right? And then the other thing that we talked about is that the rod was actually used for protection. That at times the sheep would be vulnerable to the enemy that would come into that field. But that shepherd would have that rod right there to protect the sheep, to keep the enemy away. And so we looked at how in every single one of our lives, we see the need for presence, protection, and provision. And so when we got into the message, one of the things that we started to do was to talk about all these different characteristics that are given to us in Titus, 1 Timothy, and 1 Peter 5 of what a shepherd looks like, or as we also talked about, what a shepherd smells like. And as we looked in that description, we saw that they were to be people of good reputation, people of integrity. They were to be people of personal self-control, that they were to be people that were able to lead their families well, that these were people that were hospitable, that they had a biblical knowledge and they were able to actually communicate that. They were people that had leadership skills. And we talked about how those relationship leadership skills were so important. We looked at the difference between transformational leadership and transactional leadership. In that people don't just want a task in front of them, they want to be joined together with other people to move forward and to accomplish the Lord's work. And so as we went through that list and we got to the very end of the message yesterday, there was 2 action steps that I gave you. Knowing that this is such a big deal for us here at Madison to add more leadership, the first action step I gave you was to pray for this process, but also to pray for the people. Pray for God to raise up men in this congregation to step into this role, to be shepherd. The other thing that we talked about was to pray for this process, that everything will go smoothly, that we will see the people that need to be in this role, and that God will use the people that need to be used to be in leadership here. The second thing that I shared with you that was the next action step is, as we looked at all those characteristics, whether it was integrity, whether it was to lead your family well, to be a hospitable person, I wanted every single person here at Madison to pick one of those characteristics to grow in this week. Maybe if it's hospitality, that you make the decision, this week I'm going to have somebody in my home. Because yesterday we talked about that when it comes to having people in our home, it's not about performance, it's about calling. Or maybe it's integrity. Integrity is not just doing what's right when no one's looking, but what integrity also is where our behaviors are matching up with what we believe. Maybe you believe something, but it's not really seen in the way that you actually behave. I want to remind you as you go out into this week, one of the things we talked about is that every single person plays the role of shepherd to somebody. I want you to be encouraged to know that we have the opportunity, as we see in Galatians 5, through the Holy Spirit, to lead in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and self-control, and to shepherd those that are around us in the way that they need shepherding. I hope you have an awesome week, and we'll see you next Monday.